Good morning. Welcome again to another episode of Facebook Live Tuesday's Tour. It's the second week in April. It's a little chilly out here, I can tell you. And it's about 3 weeks left in the semester. But it's another session of Facebook Live. So it's John Sautter along with April Holleiter and her production team behind the camera. And we're glad to be coming to you this morning from the Grand Prix track. We wanted to highlight this terrific event that's been held on campus, coming up on its 61st running of the Grand Prix race. And we're out on the western side of campus, and we want to bring some attention to this, and maybe in 10 days you can come in here for the race or so. So today we're going to be using this wonderful history that's put together by Zach Furman on the history of Grand Prix, 230 pages worth. I hope to do justice to all the detail in this book within the next 10 or 15 minutes as we kind of relive the memories that many of you have about the Grand Prix race. The book is wonderful in terms of the detail and really shows the progression the race has gone through from its very early days, which involves the way the race is run, where it's held, the safety features that are involved, the people on campus and within the organization that have made this truly one of Purdue's traditions that have lasted over the years. So we're on the west side of campus, and Western Athletic Complex it's called. See, over here we have Alexander Field, our baseball complex. Beautiful facility. The Boilers are doing really well now. We're so happy they were managed to beat the Indiana Hoosiers down in Indiana over the weekend, who are rated highly. And so that makes us all feel good about the baseball team. In the distance you see the softball complex, and here is the cross-country mound that's available for they do the cross-country meets here. And then on the other side of the track, we'll slowly pan over past the bleachers, and you can see this is the new rerouted 231. This is rerouted as of about 3 years ago or so. And if you're coming up from the south, we highly recommend that you come on 231, and it gives you two more entrances to the south and to the west of campus as you arrive here and avoid all the congestion of traffic in town. So let's get into the Grand Prix and some of its history. The Grand Prix actually started in May of 1958. The first race actually ever held was actually a Le Mans start. And so you can see in this photograph that the drivers actually ran across the track, got in their carts, got the carts started, and then they took off racing. This is being held there. You see Wiley Hall. This is actually to the west of Wiley Hall on campus, and that's where the first race was held. And if you go back to 1958 and think about it, President Hovde was in Hovde Hall, and using today's vernacular, he had to think about risk management, he had to think about resource allocation, he had to think about nuisance for the neighbors, all those sorts of things that might be going on as he put together the first race. But the students, the engineering students in particular, they were really trying to impress upon him and higher leadership, higher university leadership, their knowledge, their skill, and their experience in the engineering field. Go-karts really were just starting to emerge, basically putting a lawnmower engine on a cart and getting some speed out of that. But they persisted. The president agreed with them. In fact, he became their first grand marshal. He became an official starter for the race the first couple of years. And so in May of 58, the first race started. Now the track has moved several times since then. The first year was in 1958. That location by the Correc and by Wiley. For the next 3 years, it was located actually in front of Hovde Hall. Again, in the book, you can see it actually lays out. This is the very first. Here we are in front of Hovde Hall. Then it goes through a variety of iterations where it's actually out on the parking lot north of the stadium, and eventually moves through a variety of locations to the one it is today, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So it's actually continued to move as it has done that. People like Clay DeMent and Tom Cooper and other safety experts on campus, along with the students and the advisors, have helped really keep the track and the event successful. So it started in 58, a Le Mans style by Wiley. In 59 to 61, it actually went to Hovde. 62 through 68, it actually had a variety of locations on the North Stadium lot, and it became so popular in 1968 It attracted around 10,000 people to the race. They started having auxiliary events to go with it. So we actually started having concerts with big name entertainment. So Petula Clark came in for a particular concert. Some of you will recognize that name. And one of my favorite groups was here in 1968. Sam, the Sham, and the Pharaohs were here, and they performed. So they needed a better location. So in 1969, with the help of the athletic department, who donated the land, and the Purdue Alumni Association, which loaned $25,000 to the group, they actually created the race in the location on Cherry Lane in Northwestern, out by the football stadium in the corner lot, which today is used for parking for football games. But that's where the track was located. And they really entered the heyday, the good days of the track. And it was located there from 1968 to 2004 when it moved out here. But in those days, in the 70s and the 80s, in that location on campus is really when it reached its peak. It started having Grand Prix queens involved. We had Queen's Court, we had ambassadors, we have a running race, we have a tennis tournament, we have a variety of things. Yes, April?
Anne chimed in saying hi from Richard, a 1973 driver.
Oh,
Lucietto, I think. Richard Lucietto.
Wonderful, wonderful. The name's in the book. I'm sure. So lots of events. They had a carnival that came in. In fact, we arrived at Purdue in August of '71, Grand Prix weekend. You went to the carnival. They had as many as 16 rides and games that were played there. And of course, we won a goldfish like you always do. That lasts for about 2 weeks, but you took the kids there. It was really quite the event.
And Sandra Whitaker says that her granddaughter will race for the final time this year.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. We've had the drivers have evolved. A female driver won in 2007, and I'll get into drivers shortly, but the family heritage with drivers and folks that have involved with the race over the years has just been wonderful. So it reached its peak, Grand Prix reached its peak around 1985 or so. In 1985, they had 30,000 participants. It was broadcast live on ESPN. They gave away $40,000 in scholarships. And their motto has become students helping students. And so it's always been about raising money for scholarships that they give away. And so $40,000 back in those days was a lot of money and a lot of recipients. I can tell you every scholarship recipient is listed in the book. Yes, somebody else?
No.
Okay. Again, they had concerts. They had just had a wide variety of events included with it. Back in the 80s or so, 85, it peaked out with 30,000. Chris Schenkel was one of the grand marshals back then, and he actually coined the phrase, the greatest spectacle in college racing, and that has stuck with it over the years. Chris Schenkel, our Purdue alum, got his start at WBAA from Bippas, Indiana, and was doing ABC Wide World of Sports at the time, came here and actually said that about the race, and they've kind of held on to that. In 85, 86 is when it peaked out, and the accompanying student behavior on campus is what kind of became a problem. And so it started, outside of Grand Prix control, a variety of things, and it became kind of a huge party weekend, and the attendance started failing off at that particular point. A lot of things were coming together in the late 80s to include a lot of other sporting event offerings, a lot of things for the students to do. It just didn't quite have the draw that it had in the past. But to the students' credit, a reminder that the Grand Prix Foundation actually is a student organization, and it's been maintained by students over all these years. And so it's really a credit to them that this student organization has gone on for 61 years now or so. Yes.
Michael Moody Jr. says that his dad, Michael Moody, ran the team for Kappa Sigma in the late 1960s, welding together a handmade cart. He was race chairman in 1969.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good to hear from folks all over the country. Great memories again for their involvement with this. It really brought the housing units together, and even independent teams would compete in the race over the years. So again, the track moved out here on the Western Athletic Complex. It's reaches speeds of around 35 miles an hour because it has so many turns involved with it. The karts these days, and we'll have a look at some here shortly, are really capable of going much faster, close to 100 miles an hour, but it becomes more of a skill race on a facility like this. So you can see the turns. This track and the movement out here actually cost, we're told, around about $1 million or so to do it. But it's an excellent facility when it comes to kart racing, modeled after a championship racing track in Japan. The Kart Racing Association is now around the country, and we now have experienced drivers who actually will come to be a part of the particular race, whereas before it was much more of an amateur thing. You can see the start-finish line from up here. This is the pit area up here. The scoring is one of the technologies that's improved. We even have a scoring tower now located in the center of the track, and the scoring is all done electronically. So you can imagine as the race began, it actually took someone with a clipboard keeping track of each of the karts, which could lend itself to all sorts of errors and that sort of thing over the years. So it's quite commendable to see the level of safety and the level of technology and all the things that have been involved, which is what the students had in mind, I think, from the very beginning in terms of putting their skills, knowledge, and experience together. We're going to start to make our way down the steps now as we start talking about some of the drivers who have participated and actually some of the grand marshals. And I'll keep talking as April hangs onto the handrail here. Drivers have been come from all walks of experience. We now have legacies with fathers and sons who have driven in the race. We actually have couples who met. We've had married couples driving. Probably the best legacy when it comes to drivers is the Smith family. The Smith family, and that includes Tom, Ian, Dustin, Clayton, and Kyle. Those five in an extended family have won the race 8 different times. And so they really have quite the legacy involved. It's worth mentioning that the Feustel family actually were also involved with this race. In fact, Drew Feustel, back in the mid-60s, was a part of the race, the Grand Prix race. Drew Feustel, our 23rd astronaut, is now up on the International Space Station. And I suspect maybe watching the race from the International Space Station. They're going to live stream the race this year, so I suspect maybe he'll be a part of it. So just some great drivers involved over the years. Speaking of drivers, we now want to look at some of the karts. And what we have, first of all, is the pace kart. They have these days a rolling start, and so a rolling start requires a pace car, and so this is the car that gives them the rolling start. And if you can imagine looking behind these 33 different cars coming down, entering this first tight turn here, very similar to the Indianapolis 500 race, which must be the exciting part. There's 33 drivers. They identify 27 in time trials. Time trials are held this weekend. If you want to come out and see the time trials, you can. Then they'll have a sprint race before the actual race, and they'll get the additional qualifiers, the additional 6 qualifiers into the race at that particular time. This year they have 52 different entrants. They've had as many as 70 or 80 entrants over the years vying for those 33 spots. On this particular track, they'll be doing 160 laps, close to 50 miles, I understand. And one pit stop is required from all of the drivers. So again, this is the pace car. This is a car from 1983. And so it starts having a lot of safety features involved with it. And you can see what it looked like back then. Again, one pit stop is required for a fuel change. And speaking of that, this is a modern day car. And so this is a modern day car. You can see all the safety features, which they're quite proud of. But the thing that I'm most impressed with is the fuel tank. The fuel tank actually is exchangeable. So you just grab the fuel tank, take it out, put the other one back in, and eliminates any kinds of problem with exposed fuel and those sorts of things on the track. So it really has progressed. We talk about skills, knowledge, and experience of the engineering students. They've all just got to be very proud, as the organization does, about all the scholarships that they've managed to give out, and the thousands and thousands of students that have been involved either scholarship winners or involved somehow. And I can tell you all those names are listed in the book itself. Lots of traditions with it, including the famous drinking the bottle of milk. So here's the driver. In fact, this is Kyle Smith drinking milk right after the race after he won it. And again, part of the Smith family dynasty. Another interesting aspect of the race are the grand marshals, and they've always invited celebrities. And again, back in its day, they had quite the list of celebrities. In fact, Tony Holman in '74, Neil Armstrong in '75, Chris Schenkel '76, Governor Otis Bowen in '77, George Steinbrenner was here in 1979, Bob Greasy, Bobby Unser, Senator Richard Lugar, Marilyn Quayle, the wife of the vice president, was here back then. Jim Everett, the quarterback, Dwayne Sweeney, who was their official starter, from the 500, and he would come up every year and be a part of it. Tony George, Lynn St. James, the driver at the race at the Indy 500, Joe Teller, Gene Cady, all the presidents from Hovde and Hansen and Barry Ninjiski have been a part of this. So it's really they are proud of all the things that they put together that have continued to keep the Grand Prix race what it is. So again, I remind you that it's the race is in 10 days. Tickets are $7 in advance, $12 at the door. Get a group of 20, and you can come for $5. We're also open for good weather. But the Grand Prix is really the culmination, again, of all the variety of alumni who have put their efforts together. And I wanted to make sure that I closed by recognizing 3 people who the book is dedicated to and have really done a lot. And that is President Hovde, who allowed it to start in the first place when he got going. Roger Ewell was involved early on, also working with the higher level administrators and helped it get going. And then Jack Young served in as advisor over the years. And there's been a variety of challenges and battles as you think about all the locations and all the variety of things involving administration. But again, the student organization has persisted, and those people really had kind of had made it happen. And so we're so appreciative and complimentary to this entire group. And we thank Kyle Haas, the current president of the Research Foundation, and Dave Furman for bringing these carts out. They actually have a mobile museum that they bring out every year also to be a part of this. So that's it for now. This is John and April saying thank you for watching. In fact, we always appreciate the comments that you send in to us. It's just great hearing from people all over the country in response to our variety of Facebook Lives. I can tell you next month we'll be coming to you from the pitcher's mound right over on Alexander Field, and we're going to highlight the baseball program. So we hope we see you then. So thanks for watching, and hail Purdue.